Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I think I'd like to continue actually speaking about the theme of the elements, the dhatus, that we were just exploring in the meditation, the guided meditation. Those of you who wanted to follow that. And, you know, the 4 elements, 5 or 6 elements, meditation is very, very helpful for helping us to ground in the body, to pay attention to the body in these different ways. And there's many, many other applications, particularly of the 4 elements, contemplation, that we can find useful. And so not just for body awareness and not just for the time that we're sitting on the mat or chair meditating, but actually we can consider the Buddha's teaching on the 4 elements in many different ways. He taught in many different ways how we can make use of these aspects of reality. And as he said, you know, the material world can really be divided up into these 4, earth, water, fire, and air. Sometimes he spoke about 6 elements, and the other 2 are space, which I mentioned in the meditation, and also consciousness, that which is aware, that which is applying itself to the practice, and the experience of the mental reality of presence, and all the different aspects of mind that relate to that. So there are 6 elements, or there are 4 elements to be considered. And but most often in relation to material form, the Buddha spoke about the 4 earth, water, fire, and air. And there's a sutta in Majjhima where the Buddha is guiding his son, Rahula. And of course, the Buddha left his family when he went out on his spiritual quest. At the age of 29, he, you know, his son was a baby at that time, and just newborn. And the Buddha had no doubt great love and feelings of attachment, even perhaps towards his son and towards his wife and his family. But he had a greater need to set out on his spiritual quest, the quest to find the end of suffering, to realize the end of suffering, was a greater motivation for him. And so he left Rahula when he was very young. But actually, after the Buddha became the Buddha, 6 years later, about 6 years later, he, not too long after that time of his enlightenment, he made his way back to his homeland, to the Sakyan region, and reconnected with all his various clan and family members, and encouraged them to practice, encouraged them in Dhamma, and many of them, as we know, ordained, and many of them actually became fully liberated themselves, became arahants. And his wife, Yashodhara, she became a nun, became a bhikkhuni, and before that happened, before that was really able to happen, she came to the Buddha, bringing Rahula along with her. And at this point, he was about 7 years old. And she said to the Buddha, more or less, well, I've looked after him for 7 years now, so now it's your turn. And she handed him over to the Buddha, who then ordained him as a Samanera, as a novice monk. And so he basically, from that time on, Rahula was living a monastic life and receiving advice about practice and training, practicing for liberation. And he went through, 13 years as a novice before he could then, at the age of 20, he was able to, he'd reached the age when he was able to take full ordination and practice as a bhikkhu, with more precepts and a sort of more protected, more supported way of life to guide him on his path. And one gets the sense from the Pali Canon, from various suttas, that the Buddha attended to Rahula. He helped him, and others also, senior monks, helped Rahula to train himself. And this particular sutta, coming back to the sutta, Maha Rahulawada Sutta, Majjhima number 62, the Buddha and Rahula are going on an alms round together. So the Buddha's walking in front and Rahula was walking behind his father. And the thought came into Rahula's mind, how attractive the Buddha's body is. What a great physical form he has, what beauty, physical beauty he has. And oh, wow, hey, I'm the Buddha's son and I look like him. I also have a rather wonderful physical form and rather beautiful features. And the Buddha was kind of basking in this sense of, being the son of the Buddha, being a healthy specimen, a healthy physical specimen. And the Buddha recognized that this was happening. He could appreciate what was going on in his son's mind, just walking behind him on the alms round. And so he turned around and he gave his son, he gave Rahula a teaching, and basically was letting him know that the Buddha was aware of these thought processes and didn't really approve of them. They didn't really have much value, and indeed Rahula needed to be kind of upbraided. And he just invited him to basically meditate. And Rahula was very chastened, and so much so that he gave up on the alms round, gave up on his meal for the day, and he sat down by the side of the road and started meditating then and there, and just examining, what was going on, what was this kind of conceit that had arisen in his mind. And later on that day, the Buddha sought out Rahula and gave him teaching. And the teaching that he gave him was the Four Elements teaching. And so we can look at that and look at the reason why the Buddha would focus on the Four Elements as a way for his son to move forward spiritually, to come out of this kind of infatuation or enchantment with his physical form. And it's not easy, is it? I mean, for some of us, it's quite easy to want to let go of this body. But for others, if one is young and fit and attractive, it can be actually quite a fetter. And, I can remember when I was at school having friends who, as we went through puberty and we started to grow up as teenagers, it became apparent that, some of us were pretty ordinary looking, but some were really very attractive. And most definitely that had an effect on everybody, but particularly the person who's kind of carrying that beauty around. And in worldly terms, that's considered to be a great thing, to have physical beauty. What an advantage. But actually, is it really an advantage? Or is it more dukkha at the end of the day? And it became quite apparent over time that this is a source of dukkha, all right. Because when one has a beautiful appearance, one attracts all sorts of attention. It's difficult not to identify with that. And also difficult not to want to hold on to it. So then as we go through the inevitable aging process, unless we die young, as we go through that process, there can be a great sense of loss if one has become sort of known for and has identified with being of a beautiful appearance, being of an attractive appearance. So it's very hard for people not to get infatuated with the body when the body is particularly beautiful, particularly attractive. And so Rahula, was in this situation where he would seem to have had a very beautiful form, and he's young, only 20 years old at this time, actually. And so it's a very understandable, very human situation where he's just enjoying and reveling in in his own attractiveness and fitness and so forth. But the Buddha pointed out to him, consider these four elements, Rahula. This physical form, is nothing other than earth, water, fire, and air. And you need to contemplate that. Contemplate what is it you're attracted to, actually. So it's almost like dividing up, dissecting in a particular way the body. And in just the way that we were looking at the body awareness in meditation, to consider the earth element, the solidity. Okay, so the body's solid. It has weight and substance. We have a skeleton that's hard. We have nails, teeth, the bones, hard parts to the body, and what holds the body upright and gives the body structure is largely earth element. And then there's water element, which actually gives the cohesion, gives the shape also of the body. Because if we were just earth element, we'd be like a pile of powder, wouldn't we, on the ground? It's water element that enables the suppleness, the cohesive quality of the body. Just like when you add water to flour. Flour is just earth element. Put in the water and you can knead it and you can create a shape, a ball of dough. So we're just like a ball of dough. We're like the body of water and earth assumes this form, this shape. And actually the skin is very moist. The eyes are constantly, they're moistening themselves, aren't they? Every time we blink, the moisture's coating the eyeball, and they're always wet. They have to be wet. The inside of the mouth needs to be wet. If we lose the moisture in the eyes or the mouth, we feel it, and it's really uncomfortable and difficult for people who have these kind of difficulties, these kind of syndromes, dry eyes, dry mouth. Very difficult to digest and swallow without the water element. And as I said in the meditation, it's all the circulation of nutrients around the body depends upon water element. So considering the body in this way, how it's made up. And fire element, let's look at that, feeling, but also contemplating the warmth of the body. Bodies are like heaters. We're so warm. You put lots of people together in a room, a closed room, and it'll soon heat up. We have this vitality this heat. And within, particularly inside the body, and it's maintained at this temperature through what we eat and how our metabolism works. And then the contact with the outside, which is inevitably cooler, almost always. Very difficult if the outside temperature is above our body temperature, even very dangerous for the body. And we're now hearing about places where the ambient temperature is very high for extended periods of time. And what a stress, what a challenge for the body, even to the survival of the body. This is an issue for us nowadays. We can contemplate, though, within this body temperature, all the range from the cold to the hot, and how, this is part of what makes up a body. This is the digesting, the fueling of the body. We take in food and we digest it. We burn it up, essentially, for fuel. And air element, the movement of the body. We can consider this more in walking meditation than in sitting meditation, because it's the ability to move. It's the breath moving through the body in every posture. It's the sense of vibration. So, the wind around us, the breezes, the blowing of the wind, this too is air element. The Buddha went on to tell Rahula, consider this, that all these elements are internal within the body. You can contemplate the body in these ways, but also see how these elements manifest in all material things. So the wind element, we can see it all around us. We can feel it all around us as it touches the body. It's what enables the air to move around. It's what enables the weather systems. Water element, the oceans, the rivers, the rain, the snow, all the precipitation, all the flow, the water that we drink. Water element is the same water element whether it's inside the body or whether it's outside the body. And it's a really interesting thing, isn't it, just to observe how there's a glass of water, mug of water, external water element. I drink it. Now it's inside of me. Now it's me. One could think that way, but of course it's the same water element, whether it's internal or external. So there's this constant interchange going on, this constant exchange. How extraordinary. Where's me? Where do I end and where does the external begin? There's no clear dividing point, is there? There's no clear definition. There is no difference. And in the same way, let's consider the fire element, the sun, the heat, the climate, the cold, all the different ways in which fire manifests externally. Literal fire, flames of fire, heating in all different ways, the ways we cook our food. Light from the sun, heat from the sun. This fire element is the same externally as it is internally. And we can recognize that it's not a personal thing. It's not particular to this body. We're part of a whole system where these four elements are what is when we break down material form. Any kind of material form, anything on the planet that has material form. And the air element, I mentioned the winds, the movement, fire element, temperature, water element, and earth element, the solidity of the planet itself. This great ball of earth. We call it the earth, don't we? And there it is, earth element, the solidity of all that's around us, rocks. Here in Canmore, great vast mountains of rock, earth element, that sense of weight and solidity and sense of lasting through time, through considerable stretches of time. And yet we know that the earth element is also constantly changing. These mountains haven't been here for that long even. There was an ocean here not that long ago in geological time, and now these mountains have appeared as the tectonic plates push together. So even earth element is on the move, but there is the sense of solidity and weight and substance to earth element. So the Buddha was pointing out in this sutta, Maha Rahulawada Sutta, to his son, that it's good to contemplate these four elements. Contemplate these four elements internally in this body. How can they be experienced? How can the body be seen as it is, made up of these four elements? And also consider these four elements externally and take in, reflect again and again on how the four elements externally, the four elements inside, it's the same four elements. It's the same laws of nature that apply. And all of this, the whole point of this consideration is to help us to extricate ourselves, to step back from the conceit around somebody being here. This is my body. This is my form. It belongs to me. I somehow feel identified with this form. Well, when we break it down into its component qualities, these four elements, we can start to loosen up those very compelling perceptions of me, of mine, of myself, and come out of that conceit. And conceit's an interesting word. I mean, in the context of this sutta, Rahula was indeed conceited about his form. So he had a sense of a kind of sense of elevation, or a kind of sense of reveling or delighting in his physical form. But conceit doesn't necessarily mean delighting in. It can also mean having a very negative attitude towards oneself. So we can see how people don't often even think that they look so wonderful, but they can often get caught up in perceptions around inadequacy. Oh, I'm so ugly. Oh, I'm too short. I'm too tall. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. If only my nose wasn't quite like this. Maybe I should get a job on my lips. You know, they're a bit thin. or have some Botox on my wrinkles, and so on and so on. And it's a torment for so many people, because there's a sense of the ideal body and where we might fall short, and how we might want to try and get there somehow through artificial means, starving ourselves, you know, dieting, over exercising. Or maybe another problem for people is actually going the other way and not exercising enough. But you know, the drivenness of trying to somehow attain the perfect physical form, or to improve our physical form, how fruitless, how pointless, how difficult and depressing for us. So the conceit that one can experience is not necessarily a sort of reveling in our physical appearance, shape, form, features, but it can also be a sense of feeling badly about those very same things, feeling inadequate, feeling self-conscious, feeling ugly in some way or other. This too is conceit. And it's all torture, it's all dukkha, it's all suffering. And so the Buddha was really exhorting Rahula, encouraging him to just let go of that conceit, step away from it, step away from the sense of ownership, of self, of me and mine, and use this contemplation of the four elements to be able to see through the sense of anything lasting, permanent, solid, attainable, ownable, anything here that I can call mine, that I can call myself. And Rahula was actually a really good student, and he took his father's words very seriously, and he was able to practice and let go of conceit. And this actual fetter of conceit is the last fetter to go. You know, it's a very, very ubiquitous, very all-encompassing delusion that we're carrying. It's very hard for us to truly let go of the sense of self. But Rahula was able to see through to the end of conceit. And he also became an arahant at a very young age. So this is a very helpful sutta, and it's a very helpful consideration for us. Bring in the four elements. The four elements contemplation is also often given by the Buddha as a way of working with desire, and specifically desire for material things. So this hindrance of desire, which can really get in the way of our progress on the spiritual path, we need to notice it when it arises, first of all. Notice when we're in any way obsessing over our own bodies or obsessing over the bodies of others, you know, with desire in our hearts. Or, you know, when we're looking at material things with a sense of ownership or a sense of wanting more, wanting to keep, wanting to preserve that which is always changing and inevitably broken at some point and inevitably lost at some point. So to give ourselves a bit of relief from that inevitable suffering, we can right here and now contemplate the four elements in relation to the things that we're attracted to, you know, to the things we want. We want to keep, we want to attain, we're lusting after, we're trying to hold on to. And just in the same way, so we can look at our own bodies or we can look at the bodies of others and consider, what is it I'm really attracted to? What is the beauty here? And if there's any sense of physical attraction, then to bring in the four elements, contemplation, and just consider, what is this other body made up of, really? What is it? How is it constructed? This is so helpful. It's so helpful for desire, because desire, when we really look at it, when we really with it, rather than being compelled by it to seek out what we want, if we can kind of come home through our meditation practice and be with that feeling of wanting another or wanting a thing, an object of some sort or another, then we can notice that that feeling is painful. That feeling is a kind of longing, a kind of yearning, like a sort of heartache. It's like an aching, like a soreness within, a sense of something missing, a sense of something that needs to be present that's not present. How painful is that? So to really consider desire, when we're able to be with that feeling of wanting without acting on it, that's the first step, and a big step towards freedom, because then we can start to work with that feeling and bringing in this contemplation, looking at whatever it is we're wanting, whatever material object it may be, bringing in the four elements helps us to cool down, calm down, you know, look with more clarity, bring some wisdom into the picture, and through this way of looking, we can start to let go of that desire. We can see it start to fade. So it's a way of directing our attention away from the object of desire towards reality, towards the wising up, recognizing that, this is not, there's nothing really about the four elements that's worth holding on to. They are what they are. They're cool. It's a coolness that can come in. It's almost like a scientific approach, isn't it? It's almost quite clinical, but how helpful, how very helpful. The other thing that can really help, I'll just bring in relation to desire for objects, is to remember anicca, remember that, of course, things are changing all the time. All things change. And whatever it is I want now, we can just consider, well, how will it be in 50 years' time? How will it be in 100 years' time? Where will it be? What will have happened to it? And inevitably, whatever it is, it will have become obsolete. It will have broken. It will have died. It will be aged. These are so helpful, these reflections, just to recollect, come home, and loosen up, alleviate the pain of desire, of wanting. So, so valuable not to seek what we want, but to be with the wanting. Just be with the wanting. Just feel that pull, Difficult just to stay present to desire. But when we can do that, we can almost immediately become aware that it's not a static thing. It's not a thing that can last. It has a life, but it will be arising, it will be lasting for a while, and then it will fade. And there'll come a point where we realize we're not caught up in that anymore. Oh, I'd forgotten how much I wanted that thing. I don't feel like that right now. Cessation has occurred, and it may come back. The wanting may return. Another wave of wanting may arise in the mind, but we can surf those waves. What freedom to not be kind of crushed and carried along by these waves, but rather to surf the waves, see them arise, surf with them for a while, just watching, and then watch them fade away, pass away. And we're that little bit less desirous, we're that little bit less caught up in wanting, and we can literally feel the kind of lightness that comes as a result of that. There's one other way I'd like to just discuss before I finish. Another way in which the Buddha invited us to consider the four elements. And that is in relation to both not self, but also the way in which things are all connected, all interrelated. We can see through the invitation the Buddha gave to Rahula to look at the internal elements and then to look at the external elements, and to note and really give space and time to consider how all things are interchanging all the time. So these bodies are, processes. And the water element, for instance, is coming in as we drink, consume food, and it's coming out as we urinate, sweat, Where is the self in that? And this water element is circulating through all the systems externally, that are watery, that are fluid, that are liquid, the weather system, the extraordinary way in which water moves around the planet, and recognizing that we're part of that. The drop of water that comes in now is going to come out through sweat, through urine, through excretion, and it's going to go somewhere else and continue to flow through the earth, into rivers, into streams, ponds, lakes, into the ocean. How we're born of the ocean, how much we're made up of the ocean. We human beings, we're salty beings, aren't we? We sweat brine, pretty similar to the substance of the ocean. At some point way back in time, our most ancient ancestors crept out of the ocean and started to live on the land. And we're direct descendants of this incredible process. So water element is our, probably the prime substance in these bodies is water element. Considering the interconnectedness of these things, the earth element that we're made up of, how when the body dies, we could be buried or we could be burned, other things could happen, but let's consider the body that's buried. What happens to it? It literally goes back to the earth and becomes part of the soil over time. And if we're burned, actually, the ashes, they're earth element, and they'll be scattered somewhere by those who care for us. In some place, they'll enter back into the system and simply become part of the greater earth element and take other forms. So this sense of recycling is a very helpful way also to consider the four elements. It's like considering the bigger picture, isn't it? How actually, if you look at the planet Earth, a ball of matter in space, passing through, rapidly moving actually through space. It's a discrete entity in and of itself. The planet Earth is made up of earth, water, fire, and air. And what's happening to those elements? They're simply creating forms. Forms are arising and passing away over time. There's a constant change going on. On the surface of the planet Earth, there's all this movement and life and creation, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death of living things. And the non-living things are also constantly changing, reforming, restructuring, disappearing and arising. So, when we look at the material world in this way, it's a sort of a sense of a bigger picture. And it helps us to have a wiser perspective, a broader view. All of these contemplations are enabling us to let go of the sense of the personal, of the sense of permanence, helping us to let go of suffering, because to let go of the sense of self and to let go of the sense of permanence is to let go of suffering. It is to relieve our suffering, because these delusions of self and permanence are a source of great, great despair for us. Because when we hold on to these delusions and then they're shattered by the inevitable events, that we all have to experience, old age, sickness, death, loss of the loved ones, then we suffer so much when we've been holding on to these delusions. But if we can work now with a sense of right perspective, contemplating the bigger picture, seeing ourselves as part of this incredible, vast planet, but just a part of that. Four elements arising and passing. coming and going, shuffling around like a giant kaleidoscope, shapes forming, reforming, constant change. If we can see the constant change, and we can see that there's absolutely nothing there that we can make me, make mine, make myself, then we're already freeing ourselves from that suffering. And when the inevitable changes come to the body and the letting go of even this life experience that we have, we can be ready. We can be recognizing this is natural. It's completely natural. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with this. This is inevitable. And it's okay. What is there to hold on to anyhow? Now, I've only been talking about the material elements and the material realm, but we can apply the same understanding to the mental realm. And when the Buddha talks about the 6 elements, he brings in space as the 5th and consciousness as the 6th. And truly, we can also see that the same applies to consciousness, that it's constantly changing, and that it's actually not me, it's not mine. I'm not in control of it. I'm not creating the thoughts. Thoughts arise and pass away. Consciousness arises and passes away. It has its own karma. It has its own causes. It has its own effect. And what I can do as a practitioner is not only observe the body as a constantly changing impersonal phenomenon, process, but I can also observe the mind in the same way, in the same light. The same truths apply. There's nothing here that's permanent. There's nothing here that's under my control that I can say is belonging to me, that has a sense of being personal in any way at all. There's simply a flow of mental energy, a flow of thoughts, a flow of memories, a flow of views, opinions. I can observe this when I'm meditating. I can observe this in life, that this also is anicca, changeable, impermanent. This also is anatta, not self. And so this 6th element of consciousness can be seen in just the same way. And the more we can step back and see the bigger picture and let go of the sense of ownership, let go of the sense of self, this much we free ourselves. And we can observe. We can observe arising and passing, arising and passing. And in that ability that we're developing to observe the arising and passing of all these elements, then we have the possibility of wisdom arising. We get to learn from the experiences. We get to notice more and more the truth of Dhamma, the law of nature, the way of things. And as we grow in wisdom and keep observing the way things are, we come to a place of equanimity, a place of accepting, a place of not having a problem about the way things are. So we get to start to flow with reality. We're not struggling against the way things are. We're not fighting reality. We are able to allow, accept, witness, and grow in wisdom, grow in peace, grow in equanimity. And this is the way to really enable the mind to attain the peace, the tranquility, and the insight that we require in order to uproot any causes of suffering in this heart-mind, to uproot any causes of greed, any causes of desire, to work with desire in the ways that I've described, to uproot any causes of aversion, of hatred, of negativity in the mind, and to uproot the ignorance, the delusion that has us trapped in this wheel of samsara, in this cycle of birth and death. And we can apply this peaceful, wise attention to this heart mind and see the end of suffering, uproot these defilements, these core defilements, and in that way we can attain the peace, the true happiness of Nibbana. And this is not at all out of our reach. This is where we're inexorably headed, as we practice the Buddha's teachings and keep developing on the path. So I wish each and every one of you success in your practice, the ability to let go, and for the purpose of this discourse, to consider the 4 elements or consider the 6 elements, and just let the understanding of these aspects of reality permeate the mind and help with the letting go, help with the clear seeing that we need for our practice on the path to liberation. Ewan.